Nonprofit professionals, have you thought about using gift cards? They're especially helpful this time of year. Think holiday gifts for the whole team, year end bonuses, and even direct support to families in need around the holidays. Charity Charge has a free gift card program just for nonprofits with no sign-up fees or ordering minimums. Text or email a digital card for face value, no extra cost, or ship a physical card if you prefer. Let our team support your year end projects and save money on your gifting. Visit charitycharge.com to learn more and beat the holiday rush. Now, on to the episode. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Charity Charge Show. This is Grayson Harris, and today we are joined by Herman Bulls. He is the vice chairman of JLL and also sits on the board of a multitude of nonprofits. Herman, thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
Hey, Grayson, so great to be here. And I got to tell you, what you guys do at Charity Charge, what you do is just so important because I've just been involved with so many nonprofit organizations and having the idea of getting best practices and the opportunity for them to coordinate with one another is so important. So your mission and what you do is important.
I really appreciate you saying that. Is it is what we love to do here at Charity Charge, and our whole goal is to support nonprofits as best as we possibly can. So I appreciate you saying that, Herman. I would love if you could share with our audience a little bit of your background, both at JLL and then also how your background within the nonprofit community overall.
Well, you know what? Let's just start with really my background. I'm from Alabama, born down in Florence, Alabama, and the youngest of seven kids, I should
Okay.
say, born to a mother and a father who were just really hard workers, and decided in high school I had a pretty good high school career in terms of athletics and academics, and had the opportunity to be recruited by several schools. And I decided to take the challenge of West Point. So I
Okay.
went to West Point, played football a couple of years. However, more than anything, West Point is really a leadership laboratory, Grayson. And the basics of leadership, one thing we need to learn about leadership, before you can be a good leader, you need to learn how to be a good follower. And
Mm,
West Point does a fantastic job of doing that, particularly during your freshman or plebe year. No matter what accolade, what car, what clothes you had, you come in, and no pun intended here, Grayson, but they cut all your hair off and everybody looks the same. So there are no external attributes that would say one person is better or different than the next person. And that was just a fantastic opportunity for me. And one of the things I had the opportunity to do here, and I like to talk about, I had the opportunity to go to Ranger School while I was at West Point. And for your listeners who don't know what Ranger School is, it's the Army's most realistic combat small unit training. 61 days. Some people call it 61 days of hell, but it's 61 days of pure leadership. And I often say it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. And the reason I say that, Grayson, is you learn through that training that your limits are further than you think they are. And
mm.
that is something that every day I wake up, I think I'm having a bad day. I say, I could be in Ranger School. And then from there, West Point went into the Army, had a very good junior career. I stayed in active duty for 11 and a half years, and that included tours overseas. Had the opportunity to go to Harvard Business School in preparation to go back to West Point, where I served as a professor of finance and economics, and that was really a great thing. To met my wife in the Army as well, and we both went to West Point. She was an admissions officer there, and we have three
Amazing.
kids. Herman Jr., Nathaniel, and Jonathan, and two
Mhm.
of them went to West Point as well. So we're really a West Point family. My wife and I were even married there as well. And unfortunately, I lost my wife to cancer 4 or 5 years ago. And
Mm,
to show you how dedicated we are, my wife is interned at West Point as well. So West Point was very important. Army career, left the Army, and then that's where JLL comes in. JLL was previously LaSalle Partners, and we're the corporate real estate firm. And
mhm.
when I joined the firm, there were 300 professionals. We now have over 100 employees. I think we're in 89 countries around the world. And it's just been a fabulous opportunity. And I've grown with the company. And I was very fortunate. We're talking about nonprofits, is to actually start a new division of the organization. Based on my experience in the Army and teaching at West Point, I started a division called our public institutions business. And this part of the company works with federal, state, and local governments, colleges and universities, not-for-profit organizations
Mhm.
and we help them with their real estate. And the beauty here is we also have IBM and Goldman Sachs and AT&T and T and Microsoft and Apple. However, understanding the public nonprofit sector is so important, understanding their language, understanding their culture. And we've developed a group that has a great understanding of the challenges these organizations face. And also, we match the culture set with that.
I really appreciate that. And what I would love for you to expand upon is this relationship that you've built with these nonprofits within JLL. How have you taken some of those learnings and those fundamentals that you had within Ranger School and within West Point, and how have you helped embed that within the culture of that team and that new division within JLL?
Well, one of the things that I really focus on is probably two things I tell my team. Number one is no surprises. Okay. And that means keep people informed in what you're doing. And the other one is be kind, which means play well in the sandbox together. Treat others as you would like to be treated. And with that, one of the things that we really focus on throughout JLL, but I can tell you through my group that I started, is relationships. Okay. And let me give you an example when I'm talking about Grayson. Most people, for example, this earlier this week, I was down at the University of Alabama and I was
Mhm.
the speaker at the Culver House School of Business for Veterans Day. And I think I gave a pretty good speech, and the kids were certainly impressed with it. And, there's a line of them waiting when, you finish your speech, people are up and they're like, hey, suppose I really want to network with you, et cetera, et cetera. And I use this to talk about something that is very, very important. I think not only working with nonprofits, but any organization, and it's the difference between networking and relation connecting. Okay. Networking is great. Everyone needs a network, Grayson. However, networking at its basis is it's a contract. It's a quid pro
Mm.
quo. I do this for you, Grayson. You do this for me. Nothing bad about that whatsoever. However, it is definitely quid pro quo. And contracts, sometimes they go well, sometimes they don't go well,
Yeah,
and you deal with the consequences. However, connecting and what we focus on, connecting at a personal level is when you do something for or with someone without regard as to what you're going to receive in return. When you do that, Grayson, you end up with a relationship. And for all of our large clients across both the corporate and the nonprofits that I deal with, I focus on setting up the relationship. Now, anytime you have humans involved in something, something is going to go wrong. By definition, even AI has hallucinations. Something is going to go wrong.
yeah, because it's
What
built
we
on human knowledge.
There you go. And so what we focus on is developing that relationship. And generally, you can have shared values, shared goals, shared objectives. And when you make those alignments the proper way, and this is particularly important working with nonprofit organizations, right? Because they are generally what, Grayson? Mission driven.
Of course.
Now, they are concerned about their fiscal accountability. However, keep track of what the mission is. And let's, within that box, establish the relationships individually with the decision makers in that organization, as well as have that shared value with the goals of that organization. And that's so important because when you work with people that feel like they're working with you and you're working with them, you have a better relationship. As a result of that, you have what? Better communication. Again, things are going to go wrong. So how do you problem solve and how do you come to the end of it? So that is so critical. And my Army training, there's no doubt, and West Point training helps me see things that way.
I really appreciate that answer, and I think we align, with what we're doing at Charity Charge in terms of that philosophy. And I think a challenge that I'd love to get your perspective on is the scalability of these relationships. You were at the company where y'all were at 300 strong and, going out and making these one-on-one connections and relationships. How have you seen that scale with the organization as y'all now, have over 100,000 employees and maintaining that culture of relationship and building that for the clients that you serve?
Well, you just mentioned word, and it's culture. In culture, a definition of culture is what are the norms of the organization? What are the expectations of the organizations? How do people in the organization hold others accountable? Right. So it's not like we've got a police force going out saying you got to connect with people.
Yeah.
However, the old saying, see something, say something. All of my teams, and I lead a lot of client presentations, and we always have a debrief after the presentation, even when they go great. And let me tell you, I was vice chair of the board at USAA for the last 5 years, served on that board for 15 years. And the chairman that I worked with for 5 years used to command the Blue Angels. Okay. And he also he was the leader of Top Gun school, right?
Okay.
So you're working with these precision aircraft going past the sound barrier. And the show on the ground, we see it and it all looks just perfect. And he said that after every show, they go back and they self critique. Now, here, life and death is at space. Because if they're a nanosecond off, right, it can cause a collision that could be catastrophic.
Mm.
And what they do is do that debrief. We do the same thing in terms of presentations that we do. We say, hey, first of all, practice, practice, practice. You got to prepare, right? The reason Nick Saban was one of the greatest coaches ever because he prepared his team. You can probably tell him from Alabama, right?
I was
Roll
gonna
Tide.
say you're probably a big fan, yeah.
Yeah, I am. And also Army football, don't forget Army football back there. However, that preparation is important, and that means a team coming together, and that's what a definition of leadership is: ability to influence a group to accomplish a common goal. You get the leadership, you do whatever you're doing, and then there's the feedback loop of how did we do? What could we have done better? But do your research. Before I meet with anyone, whether it's a nonprofit leader or a corporate leader, I want to find out everything I can about them, Grayson. And one little simple trick for your audience is make sure they do this. Don't go right into the meeting and start talking about, well, what are your real estate needs? When's your lease expire? I want to know, tell me about your family. Tell me about your football team. Well, how did Clemson do last week? Because those are the things that you do that starts to build rapport in a relationship. And I've had situations I've had to deal with that we've actually not done something the way we were supposed to do it. And that happens. Doesn't happen very often. However, when you're direct, you're transparent, and you have that relationship, you talk about it and you solve it very, very quickly. And that's important.
I love that. I think there's many lessons to be said and building that relationship and not starting on the sale right from the get go. I would love if you could expand a little bit upon for our audience what the role of JLL is in that relationship. After you've built that rapport, what does that look like whenever you're working with a nonprofit or public client?
Sure. I think to help answer that, Grayson, the first thing to do is just describe JLO very quickly. We provide real estate services to any organization, okay, and it includes nonprofit organizations. And we think of it as two separate groups. One is our investor group. So there we provide services to pension funds, high net worth individuals, sovereign wealth funds that are investing in real estate. So the first thing we do is help them decide what their strategy is out and implement that strategy by deciding what sector of the real estate market do they want to invest in. So it could be office, it could be retail, it could be industrial. These
Wow.
days, data centers, something we didn't say 10 years ago, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got all of these types. And then that particular group works with the investor to decide the strategy and then we implement it. Then they come over to the other side of a firm where I said, now I used to work in the investment portion part of the firm. I did that very early in my career. And then we, on the services side, we help occupiers. And that is people who are not looking at real estate as an investment. They're looking at it as a multiplier, so to speak, of helping them accomplish their mission, making them more efficient. And with that, we have everything from lease representation, helping people find space, people that own their own buildings. We do facilities management for them to help them operate their building. They may have issues with environmental. So we have environmental issues we can look at. Then we have specialists in all of the areas that we talked about related to product type. And then, for example, we have specific groups. We have a healthcare group. We have a law group. We have a data center group. We have the public institutions
Right.
group that I talked to you about. So it's really a matrixed organization with the foundation being, Grayson, practically anything to do with real estate. We're able, and I'm very, very fortunate that I get to talk to people when they say, we have an issue, we have a problem, we're not really sure what it is. And with my 36 years of experience, I look at the issue and say, this is what we need to do. And one thing that we've gotten really, really good on, and I think this is important for your audience to understand, is we look at it as one firm. Even though we have people in all of these disparate organizations doing everything, the idea is bring together the team, the task force that's needed for that client, and then make sure something from my military training, we have unity of command. That means you don't have to, Grayson, worry about who do I need to call in JLL. Your account manager has that responsibility, and we pull the appropriate team of experts together and make it happen. In the role that I usually play, I call it the pressure cooker role. Okay. So I'm not day to day on it. However, I'm very aware of what's going on with my clients. And I go and meet with them separately from the account team. And the reason I call it the pressure cooker, you get people in that relationship we talked about earlier,
Hmm.
they will tell you the little things that may not be going right. Right. So you get that and you're able to head it off before it becomes a big thing. And that relationship management at the senior level is so important. And I'm very fortunate with the fact that, I've executive experience within the company. I've served on seven public company boards and having this. So I speak their language and our workers are great, but they're generally looking not tunnel vision, but they're looking at what their job is. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate I can see the whole picture. And what else can I do? Translate the language from that executive's mind to what it is they really want done.
I love that. And, you speak to this experience, right? 35 years and also sitting on the boards of many public companies. That experience has also allowed you to be a really successful board member within the nonprofit space and world as well. Can you speak more to what that looks like for you and what organizations you're currently supporting?
Sure. Well, first of all, it starts with one of the edicts that my family taught me: to whom much is given, much is expected, right? Okay. Kind of road, but it's so true. And throughout, even before, say, I became, that some people say a successful businessman, I always tried to give back from giving blood a long time ago to helping coach my kids' little league teams. That's all a process of giving back. However, on the board sides, I've had the opportunity to serve on three prominent nonprofit entities. And the first one, and I tell people if you can find something that there's an affinity with something you really, really, really like, that's important. So I told you earlier I played football at West Point for 2 years. My younger
Mhm.
son Jonathan played for 4 years. Went to a bowl game. You get to live vicariously through your kids to go do it. And I hope your listeners gonna be watching that Army Navy game on December 11th here up in
Exciting
Baltimore.
times.
There you go. You got to do it. So having that and this affinity I have for sports, I was able to set on the Military Bowl board, which is a foot NCAA sanctioned game that's held here
Mhm.
in the Washington D.C. area. We had it started at JFK Stadium, and now we have it down at the Naval Academy. And for 10 years, being there behind the scenes, helping raise the money, helping recruit the teams to play, seeing how this bowl thing works, as they say, seeing the sausage made. So, and then one of the things that we do with the proceeds from that game is we work with wounded warriors. Okay, we have a retreat out in Maryland where they come with their families and do things. So it's not
Mm.
certainly just the football game; it's the fun of that. And obviously, as a veteran, that's something that I was doubly proud to be a part of because of the veteran, as well as the fact that I love football and sports. Then the next one is my alma mater at West Point. I'm vice chair of the board of the West Point Association of Graduates. And
Okay.
what we are is like most organizations, we have two roles that we play. One is to support West Point, and that generally means raising money. And the other one is to support our graduates, and that is doing things for alumni support, helping them find jobs, transition, putting our different West Point societies and countries all over the communities, I'm sorry, all over the United States, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been on that board for almost 20 years and I'm vice chair of that board now. And it's just this great feeling of giving back and
Mm.
doing great things for your alma mater. And then probably one that I've been on for 8.5 years now is the American Red Cross. And I started on the audit committee. Then I uh, head the governance committee. It is so important finding new board members, and I head the group that does that. And then for the last year and a half, I've actually been vice chair of the board.
Mm.
And that is just so, I think of myself as this young kid from Alabama, and when I used to be out on a farm, and you're looking up and said, well, here I am working for this organization that was chartered by Congress, and ultimately the president was responsible for it. And this little country boy from Alabama is vice chair of the board of it. And that's really cool. Then another one I did that was certainly in the sense of giving back, Grayson, that I still pinch myself. I was on the defense policy board which is the board of directors, so to speak, for the defense secretary in the last administration. So, Grayson, you ready for this? These are the people I served with. I mean, I'm sitting in a room,
Mm.
highly classified information, so I can't tell you what we talked about. But I'm sitting there with Madeleine Albright, Henry Kissinger, Carter Ash. I mean,
Yeah,
John Heisman. I mean, it's just believe me, once I'm in the room, I feel comfortable being there. But when you sit back and think about it, you say,
kind of zoom out.
really here? I remember in 1973, 74, I'm in high school, and Henry Kissinger's talking about China and going, and I'm here in the same room with him. So those are nominal experiences because you're giving, and yet I receive so much back in return.
I love all of your experiences. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing some of those stories too. And for our nonprofit audience, with your perspective of both sitting on the board of some nonprofits and some for-profit institutions, and this experience as a business leader within JLL and other organizations as well, what would be a piece of advice you would give for our listeners as they tune in?
Well, particularly from a nonprofit perspective, the first thing is keep your eye on the ball of what your mission is. The
Mm,
mission is so important. And from that, it's important to have a strategy. And that strategy is so important because that's where you're saying, how do we apply our mission and how are we going to position ourselves so that we can apply this mission for the long term? And that includes both in terms of what programs are we going to have, and then more importantly, how are we going to fund those programs and how are we going to make people aware of what we're doing and how they can benefit from those programs. And then for the people that are on the board, okay, this is very, very, very important, particularly for first time board members. Being on a board is easy in one sense because you don't have to answer any questions. However, the difficult part is your job is to ask questions. That's the only thing you need to do. And you need to ask good questions. And there is an old adage for people that are working on boards: nose in, meaning smell around and know what's going on, fingers out. Management is responsible for implementing and management. Board is responsible for governance. And think of governance as just saying, let's make sure the train stays on the track. Now,
mm,
I'm chair of a public company board, and I have been for the last 3.5 years. And I will be talking to the CEO of that company tomorrow. And he and I were in front of we had all our senior people together. It's an international company around the world. And I explained to people, I never tell Julian what to do. Never. Because think about it. I'm also his rater. So if I tell him to do something, I'm what? Biased in that. And if it doesn't work, how am I going to tell him that he didn't do a good job? So it's so important that you understand what the governance role is. Will I answer any question that he asks relative to what this situation is as the board does? Yes. Do we approve the strategy? And do we have
mm.
a really debated conversations on constructive criticism, constructive challenge, constructive skepticism? Yes, we do. And many times it's not what question is asked, but to make sure you've got a great relationship between that board and that management team, it's how do you ask the question? That is so important because it really comes down to what we talked about earlier: relationships, interaction with human beings, and leadership that I talked about. How do you motivate people to want to do more, like Ranger School, than they think they can do?
Thank you for that answer. And as we look to the end of the year and to the next year, what is going on at JLL, and how are you excited for the future?
Well, I'm really excited because one of the things that we did, really starting about 10 years ago, is really focusing on technology and real estate. So we started with funds. We do real estate funds where we go out and make partial investments in companies that are doing things around technology related to real estate. And that has been great because it keeps us on the leading edge of what's going on. And one of the reasons these companies like us to invest in them, two reasons. Number one, they want the money. But number two, we have, if you think data is really what it's about, right? And with all of our clients and all of the information we have, and except we don't necessarily experiment on our clients, but we use this to find innovative new ways of doing things. So we make some money from it and we also help our clients better. So that's number one. Then the second thing to show that we're actually starting in 2026, we're going to start a new segment of reporting. When you're with a public company, you report in segments. This is how our occupier service is doing, this is how our
Yeah.
investment service is doing, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to bring to bear for the public to see and for our employees to see. We've got a technology sector now, believe it or not. We're a real estate company, and we're going to have a sector that reports on technology because we use technology to do everything we do with our clients. So a
Okay.
client wants to rent some space. The space is in Tokyo and the decision maker is in the United States. We have a firm we call Blackbird where we can actually show them the space in the building, show them what the view is outside of the building, and take a bird's eye view, so to speak, and show them where they are relative to all the other important attractions or other areas in the country. So that's just one small example of how we're using many, many, many aspects of technology and AI. We have even our own JLL GPT that we use to help this vast grove of information, clients with problems. We're able, in a very safe environment,
Yeah.
able to do that. So the future is technology and AI. And I'm happy to say what I'm excited about next year is JLL is at the cutting edge of that for real estate and service companies.
Herman, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing more about your journey to the point that we are today, your background at West Point and within the military, and how you have continued to take that culture that you have learned from that experience and help build that team within JLL and construct good nonprofits as well. Thanks for coming on, Herman.
Well, Grayson, thank you for having me. And I want to thank you and also my JLL support team who do a great job preparing me for these opportunities. But we really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to share our story as well as hopefully provide information that will help our nonprofit because it's so important, particularly with the issues going on with our government, that the nonprofits need to step in and do those humanitarian missions, do those education missions, do those in this case of the Red Sox Cross with our swimming lessons and our
Yeah.
fire alarms, those safety issues. They are so important because we are in essence that other arm of government that help people live better lives.